hi to everybody. I'm going to spotlight the three of us so that we kind of have a more intimate looking conversation, at least between us for now. And then if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas you want to just throw in the chat for a while the three of us are talking, that's great. And then at the end, if it's cool with you guys, we can have a Q&A at the end as well and answer as many questions as possible. Let's just start us off. Hey, everyone. Welcome to this week's weekly briefing. If you don't know me, I'm Tim Thompson, and my guests today are Blair Enns and David Baker. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
You guys are so predictable. It's horrible.
David and I are so close. We finish each other's sandwiches.
Yeah, is that the way it works? Oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever collaborated with you guys live on a camera, so I don't know what I'm more nervous about, keeping you guys in order or trying to think of topics that keep up with the two of you. So I'll do my best regardless of what it is.
You've asked us to be on your thing for years and years, and finally we said yes. It's like, okay, just quit asking. I'm kidding.
Let's get to some substance.
I appreciate it. Yeah, let's do it. Again, the topic this week, we're calling it the resilience in a chaotic time. The two of you again popped in my mind, but in all seriousness, I was thinking, this is one of those moments where confidence has to prevail. There has to be some sort of understanding and logic behind people's reaction. And I didn't want a marketplace to just go crazy and everyone panic without having like a bigger perspective. So I've admired and appreciated your work for over the years, and to bring in your perspective into our thoughts this week is great. Let's just talk about like what we're seeing. I'll put out there to begin with, I just think that it's a news cycle story, and it's kind of silly that's starting things up. But I want to know from you guys if there's what you're seeing, what you're feeling, and what your thoughts might be of this like downturn in the economy that people are talking about.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead, David?
Yeah, if I just kind of relate what I hear, it's sort of a selection bias because people aren't going to call me unless they want help with something, right? But the signal in all that noise for me is that I've generally been busy over the decades with some dips here and there, but it's what they ask me for help with. So nobody's asking me for help with how to manage their growth, right? How to hire a lot of people quickly, how to structure roles. That's not happening. They're hiring me mainly to help with building their business. Like things are just slow for them. And then we have quite a bit of M&A activity on the side too, because I think people are just being introspective about how much longer they want to do this, right? When I look, I always like to kind of bounce back to March of 2020 when we were wiping off our UPS packages because we thought we were going to die, Well, it's nothing like that, I think we're sort of, I think there was just a lot of pin-up demand that we misunderstood as green shoots of growth happening, when in fact it was pin-up demand, and that has slowed up quite a bit. So I don't really think the business fundamentals are all that bad. I just think we're so used to having crazy times that this feels worse than it really is. And things are slow for people. So by slow, I mean it takes longer to get clients to do things. You may have lots of conversations that feel sort of good, but it takes a lot more work to close them and so on. The firms that are experiencing strong growth, and there are some, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15%, usually that's coming on the back of a single client. And then you have some firms that have just things got caught up with them. It's like they never maintained the boat, and now there's a storm and now they're in trouble. That's the small ones at the bottom. Most firms are just like, you know what? This is not as fun as it used to be, but it's still okay. It's like, I'm not cutting my payroll. I wish it was a little bit better. So I'm not doom and gloom at all about it. I just feel like it's one of those times. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's like, it's a forcing function to help you see what you really want from your business. And one thing I hope is, and I'll stop with this, but one thing I hope is that people will either write down in a journal or make a point to remember what it feels like to not have their shit together and then face something like this, right? where, oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd thought about my positioning. I wish I'd thought about having a thicker cash cushion. I wish I'd thought about having a marketing plan spun up, because some of that stuff, it takes a while to do. So anyway, that's kind of how I'm feeling about it.
That in a way, thank you for sharing that. But in a way, like that's why I chose the word resilience. I think the thought plan of or let's say like the planning that it takes to build up something so you can be
Mhm.
resilient a certain time
Mhm.
is something that we often recognize in hindsight, but really with a lot of the coaching we want to do is have people see that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Blair, I would imagine people are just asking you like where the next sales lead is. Don't they see you as the sales guy of like, okay, Blair, where's the money? Tell me where all the money is right now.
Yeah, and if the magic service that I should have that everybody wants is leads, give me the leads. And the training we do at Win Without Pitching is around, the lead generation part is about how you think long term about how an expert should generate leads. And we're not exactly the go-to solution for like I need leads now. And the overwhelming sales inquiry is what can you do to help me get leads now? And my answer is, I can help you get leads in months from now. And there are other people, who have solutions to that problem. But if I back up and just, look at the situation and ask kind of, is the sky falling? I think, and it's hard to separate the bias of my own business and the things that we've been experiencing for other reasons, but I think it's all of this year and most of last year have been soft in the creative firm space.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you can track how consumers, so COVID was like this tidal wave of cash. Like at first, everything froze. Then there was this wave of cash moving through the system. And a lot of businesses went, oh, the world isn't going to end in 2020. It's actually a pretty good year. And then 2021 was also a good year, probably maybe the best year for a lot of firms here. And then 2022, you started to see the cash kind of move through the system. I think about there's in British Columbia where I live right now, there was a massive landslide that dammed a river. And the river just built up for, I forget how big, but 30 meters high. And it just broke a couple of days ago. And so now there's this 2 meter surge going down the Fraser River. It might be out to the ocean by now, but it's just the news is like, okay, in 6 hours, it's going to be here. So everybody's kind of bracing for this cash surge, or this water surge. And I think COVID, in hindsight, COVID was a little bit like that, right? And then so it goes through. And in our own business, my wife and business partner was saying, is there going to be a backlash to this?
Of course.
And
Yeah.
I was like, nah, this is the new high tide, and it's all up from here. And that hasn't necessarily
Says the
been the
sales
case.
guy. Says the
Yeah,
sales
of
guy.
Yeah, says the
course.
optimistic sales guy. I think there's a lot of things. So first of all, macroeconomically, I'm not an economist. I don't pay a lot of attention to these things, although I haven't been paying attention lately. There is a lot of confusing signals about what is going on in the economy. Some
Mhm.
people are adamant the signs are there. We are in a recession. Well, the stock market's ripping and other things are positive. And look at the jobs report. It wasn't as great but it's still pretty good. Lowest unemployment 50 years, all these things. It is really hard to tell from the news what is going on. I would say in the broader creative firm market, there, like I started to say earlier, I think we're about roughly 18 months into pressure, a feeling of pressure. And it might be the COVID money washing out. It's a whole bunch of other things. It's an election year in the US. It's lots of things. I actually think one of the biggest things affecting the creative firm space is 1 million white collar jobs laid off starting about a year ago. Really started with Elon Musk taking over Twitter, saying, hey, we can do this with 15% of the engineers. Let's lay off 85. That triggered all the other big tech. The interest rates meant that the startup ecosystem where there's no requirement to be profitable, that went away. It quit being an arms race for talent. You think of those 1 million people who were laid off, how many software seats did they have? 4 each? 4 million seats. I think the creative firm space is overly exposed to SaaS. And I think as a result, we are suffering more than other professions. You look at how species go extinct, it's almost, the theory is press pulse. It's a combination of pressure and then a pulse, a constant pressure in the environment. And we are experiencing the pressure right now. Cash reserves are dwindling, et cetera, financial pressure. And then one thing hits, something happens. You're getting divorced, key employee, key client leaves, et cetera, and you can't withstand the pulse. And we are months into pressure, and some firms are exposed to a pulse, and we're seeing it happen. We're seeing businesses shut down. And to David's point, conversations with people saying, I just don't have the stomach for this anymore.
Yeah, I like the pressure and pulse analogy. That's similar to what I've been seeing. I get a look at like long-term accounts receivable with clients. I do weekly cash flow meetings with most of the people I work with. And then we do these quarterly reports where we can actually kind of look at a collective of agencies and see what some of the mega trends are. And that the up and down of accounts payable or usage of debt is what you can see on some issues, how cash can build up, and then how really truly it's the long-term accounts receivable that gives us the headlight view of like how we're going to be able to handle some pressure as it comes at us. Because most people don't recognize their invoices that are in the client's hands or invoices you're soon to send to a client as a savings account that allows you some cushion. And when that starts drying up, you might not realize how few dollars you're going to have left. You knew months ago that you were slow in sales, but you didn't realize how few dollars you're going to have left in the next 8 weeks until you look that way. So I saw that peak happening going into the summer, but we saw a slight lift. And to be honest, so from my perspective, I feel like whatever the news is talking about today, we've been feeling for 18 months. And we've been dealing with it and have some resilience. And so in our industry, we're not going to be as reactionary as a consumer product good company. But I do think that the buying confidence or the buying, we'll say like base that's going to reach out and try something new and take risk, I think that's what we're going to see people change. They're going to want to actually not take risk. They're going to be in a very preservation mode. So when our clients are in preservation mode, they're not finding new agencies to work with. They're working with the same old agency, and status quo bias starts to set in of like, whatever we did last year, we'll repeat this year because I won't get fired if I do the same as last year. But if I try something risky, it's too risky right now. I'm at 2 on edge. And that's where we're going to see a little bit of that pressure buildup you're talking about, Blair, of not being able to find that next new client. So what David said is like retaining those old clients, if they're around, they're good, but the new ones aren't coming. And that's what's creating a little bit of a shift in our industry. I think that there's probably an angle to, what we can conclude together in a way and say, there's some global behavior that we're somewhat in control of as business owners. And that might just be how we handle our business. Your experience has to be the same as mine, where people look desperate, they lose a lot more business than when they sound and look confident and doing some reach out or working with clients.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I was going to say that from a leadership standpoint, I think it's really important to get the balance right between, you have to be honest with people so that they don't think you're gaslighting them, but you also have to be hopeful, right? And so that balance is really hard. And it seems like what a time like this, the kind of pressure it puts on a leader is that the leader has to keep the long term in view, but has to make a few short term compromises that won't completely pull the rug out from under them long term. And that balancing those two things, like a short term compromise that doesn't kill you long term in everything, including sales and pricing and your positioning and everything, your people, is really tough. And then combine that with the fact that there isn't as much certainty in your leadership decisions, but you have to decide. Like, if you don't decide, everybody's going to die. There's room for 4 people in this lifeboat. There's 6 people. You keep dillying around, you're all going to drown. It's like, so you have to make decisions before there's complete clarity, and then correct them if there's wrong, if they're wrong. But that's what makes leadership particularly lonely at times like this, where you have to depend on your peers, like the other people on the call like this, because they understand those pressures. They understand the lack of clarity and how you can't allow that lack of clarity to keep you from moving forward and making decisions. What'll kill you is not making decisions. Making a few wrong decisions will not kill you. But if you don't make decisions, you're dead.
I love how adamant you are. Indecision has got to be the game changer, or the killer of all things, right?
Yeah, right.
And you probably are adamant because you sit in the same position as me, is what you're often sitting across from somebody and say, please make this decision now. This is the time to do it. If you wait 2 weeks, we can't float the cash the same way, or those resources won't be available the same way. And we could see something that we want them to anchor against, but that hesitation just hurts things.
Yeah, nobody said, "Oh, I wish I'd waited longer before I made that decision." It's like, no, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Go ahead, Blair. We
Sorry, what was the question?
For you. I don't know.
David was talking. I wasn't listening. Just kidding.
What's
you
new?
looked like you're about ready to say something. I thought it would just give you a moment to jump in if you wanted to there. That's pretty funny.
I'll just echo David's point. I think for a lot of firms right now, the goal is, and there are times in the life cycle of any business or any industry, quite frankly, where the goal is to survive, right? So the biggest thing is existential risk. And to your points, this isn't my domain. I can talk a little bit about sales and what to do and what not to do, with a lot of what not to do. But, to David's point is, you've got to make these decisions that allow you to survive. And, wait for the, maybe mixing metaphors here. You want to be able to surf the next wave when it gets here. And that often means making the ruthless decisions. And I think we did a podcast on this recently, and you had a post on it. One of your most recent posts, David, maybe earlier this week, about putting your own oxygen mask on first, which you were referencing that metaphor. And, you all know what the decisions are around that, what that means. But I think you spelled out some in the post. It's really worth reading. It came out this last Sunday.
Yeah, I have, I can sit and build a cash flow for somebody and tell them exactly the decisions to make mathematically, but there seems to be a resistance because they always want there to be like the magic pony around the corner but what if something does come in, and then I'm going to not have the team or not have the resources, or, be strapped. And I often try to tell them that's your problem every day. I mean, what if you were winning right now and a magic pony came around the corner? Somehow you would feel like you could fill in the blank then. So just because you have to make the hard decision to let somebody go this week to bring someone back on that week, they'll be thankful that you gave them their job back. Don't be afraid. But to the oxygen mask idea, David, the thought of like, but if you're not around as a business owner and you can't sustain things, everyone loses their job. So we have to know when to respond. This doesn't feel to me immediately like everyone should cut back. I want people to steer away from like a scarcity mentality. That's the way I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking that the long-term economic picture is confusing, but there's some obvious turnarounds taking place, and the opportunity to engage clients the way the long-term perspective you have, Blair, but to engage clients to gain consumer confidence today while they're in preservation mode means in the future, when they're in promotion mode and they're going to throw more money at you, they're going to remember you were there, and then you're going to be their long-term client. So to engage somebody and not push too hard, maybe not go for the gold status on every job, but to recognize, hey, let's be smart as I price the project and create a production strategy to get the work done, that it looked like I'm engaging and solving the problems with my client instead of being the problem for my client.
Yeah,
I'm totally. No, go ahead, Blair.
If you look at the sales front, your biggest competitor right now is not another competitor. It's not another person in this room. It's indecision. So, David and Tim are talking about, make a decision. Your clients are going through the same thing. There's even been a recent study on this. It's the number one reason you didn't win that deal. it's not because they hired somebody else. It's they decided not to act. So how do you combat indecision, FUD? There are a few different things you can think about. One is break up the engagement into something smaller. Make it easier to hire you for a smaller amount of money. Let's just get started on doing X. So little actions are better than no action, right? So get the client taking action with you, especially if it's a new client. You just want to begin the engagement. I mean, you want to get paid. So just break up the engagement. If it's a new client and you're certain you're combating this uncertainty, it's almost universal. Think about guaranteeing that first phase. Think about a small project with a guarantee. So instead of like doing it for free, just say, hey, let's just do this. Let's take on this first project, whatever it is. And the first phase tends to be more kind of strategic or creative development in nature. So it's more the thinking stuff than the doing stuff. But have the first phase go to a point where there's a deliverable where you guarantee it. Consider a guarantee. Hire us. Let's take this one step at a time. Let's just commit to the small amount of money. It'll take this long. We'll get to this deliverable. At that point, you can make a decision about whether or not you want to move forward on this project. And then you could weave a guarantee into that too, if you need to. Just say, if at that point we present whatever to you, you feel like you've made a mistake, we'll give you your money back. Fire us, let us go. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. There are some conditions where you have to be careful. But think about it. These things. So my overall advice on this when combating uncertainty is make it easier to hire you. Make the first step smaller, make the price smaller, take away other forms of risk.
Yeah, I think I know the case that you're talking about, Blair, and the proposition that we often have in sales is FOMO, and this thought of like, if you don't act now, you'll miss out on opportunity in the future. So you should grab this software or visit that client or whatever. Just go do it, so the opportunity will be there. And the conclusion for this person was FOMO. Many of the things we're seeing right now is the fear of messing up. So the client, this weird ghosting effect, is getting somebody to that moment of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and then pushing too hard, and it makes them back off from the engagement because they're actually coming across a moment of indecision, and your push makes them disengage. What they do is go do research to make sure they're not messing up. So that pause that we're feeling is this pause of like, they're just double checking before they come back to you 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later. And that's a weird behavior that hasn't often been there for us. So we get this now new buying pattern that we're getting used to. But if we push too hard, push the wrong way, we get there. So I love that you're talking about like break this thing down into something they can easily engage, where they don't feel like they're going to mess up by doing this one small step, and then let that snowball build up over time instead of just one big hit.
And can I just add to that? Things like, so the biggest mistake you're going to make on the sales front in tough times is you're going to push too hard. And I wrote a post to drop today. I'll drop a link in the chat here. It's called 4 Ways to Commodify Your Offering, but it's basically the first one you're probably already doing, but the other 3 things are tied to the things we tend to do in tough economic times to increase sales that end up commodifying our offering. So you've got a nervous late stage prospective client and you need the money, so you're pushing harder. And I feel this. I'm on the buying end of some of these deals where the salesperson's pushing a little bit too hard. The salesperson cuts price immediately. They're just sending all the signals of desperation at a time when I need reassurance. So just try that on. Are you, even with your team members, you're asking, hey, what's the status of that proposal with client X? And what you're saying by asking that innocuous question is, go check in with them, ask them again, even though you checked in 4 days ago, and put a little pressure on them. You don't mean it that way, but that's what your team member is translating that into. And the experience, what the client is experiencing is pressure. You're just asking the account manager, the project manager, what's the status of that project? I'll get back to you. And it's translating into pressure for the client. So you have to even be careful about the questions that you're posing to your team. There's a lot of pressure being applied because of the questions you ask that you might be oblivious to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It really is asking new questions. That's what we're basically saying. Learn how to ask new questions. How about you?
Hey,
Dave?
if I broke this up into a smaller step and we just like committed to the first phase, would that help? Would that be helpful? Would that make it easier to move forward? What about if I just gave you 100% guarantee on that first phase? If we deliver it, if like for any reason you're unhappy, we'll give you your money back. No, so I'll take all the risk away from you, other than a couple of weeks of working with us. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that's excellent. My latest move was I hear what you're saying. How about I just come back to you with another proposal where we just do this one piece first, and then we can get to the bigger steps later, so that you are presenting a deliverable right to them. Exactly. But feel free to ask them for a dialogue about their situation, instead of thinking, leave it, send the messenger pigeon to them, drop the thing, and hopefully everything was in the right place at the right time when you dropped it. David, you're going to step in there.
Oh, I was just going to say this is sort of a boring financial point, but I wouldn't pay too much to your P&L these days. Like, I'm totally fine if you don't make any profit for however long you need to do it. You do need to pay attention to your cash, and you pay attention to your balance sheet. So you could just decide, you know what? We're going to keep certain people here. We're gonna forgo the dream of profit for a little bit, but do not let your financial situation decay on your balance sheet. Do not take out debt for this stuff. Do not let your cash cushion drop. I would much rather have sleepless nights from trying to scramble around and finding people to do things than sleepless nights of not being able to meet payroll. So just change your expectations. Like, okay, I'm not going to make money this year. That's fine. But I'm not, I may cut my pay just a little bit, not much. And but I'm going to look at the bottom line of my balance sheet, and I'm just not going to let that decay. You want to be here for when this turns around, right? And not cause all kinds of harm. That means that when things do turn around, it takes you even longer to climb back out of the hole you created.
I want to add to that this is also not a good time to invest in projects. And what often people want to do is, when they feel desperate, they want to give their clients more than the client paid for, so that they could retain that client, almost earn goodwill. I think it's not necessary right now. This is a very practical time. You can be very practical with your client. You can meet their needs with the budget that they gave you. My saying is, if the client wanted you to do more, they would have given you more money to do it. So it's really great time to manage your expectations, and you do not need to overperform. I know that's often some strategy, especially if you're feeling desperate. You want to overcome any future indecisions by showing them how great you are. But you can really compromise too much on the cash front by doing that. That won't pay off. This is not
Right.
the
Like,
moment it's gonna pay off.
never vacuum the house, because you're going to have to do it again. It's like, do not set up expectations like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Is that how you get away with it at home?
That's how he's been married for 75 years.
But honey, if I do the dishes, I don't have to do them again. Why do I have to do them this time, right? That's very funny.
Hope Julie doesn't listen to this. I'm screwed.
Yeah, I'm going to send it right to her. So let's maybe put some practical ideas here. We've already dropped a couple of them, so getting us started. Any other like practical ways of just dealing with this moment? Watch your cash, and specifically your balance sheet. And you and I know, David, that in the long run, if you're going to sell your business or it's going to have value, that balance sheet's going to be the indicator, right? If you're sitting on debt, it's much harder to sell your business.
Right, for sure.
That profit will be nice because it's a 3-year look back. You have to kind of make sure you have like really clean P&L for some of that. But to be in business is a better version of selling your business than to have a bunch of debt and be almost walking away. It's the wrong way to go about it. So I love that.
Simplify your life. My God, like, is there not a better time to do that? Simplify your life and decide Like go all the way back to when you started this business. I want to have more freedom. I want to make more money. I want to choose who I get to work with and so on. And now just fast forward to where you are. To what extent are those things true? And if they're not true, use this as a forcing function to make the tough decisions that you'd never make if things are great. That would be one tip I would give everybody.
David, Blair and I talked about that for like 30 or 40 minutes at dinner that night of like how you can
Mm.
keep things so simple. And we're trying to do the same thing as you. And we have, no matter what, twice as many people as you have. We can't figure out how to get down to two people the way you get down to two people and keep things going. It's pretty impressive. But that's a really great advice.
It's just to build on that. It's really inspirational when you meet somebody who has a business that does the revenue that your business does and has a quarter of the people. It's such an it's such an inspiration and a frustration.
Total frustration.
But now is the time to take some cues from some of those people.
And I mean, even things like, what are all the standing meetings you have in a week? Like, are those really necessary? Or are they just like, it's like weeds? Meetings are like weeds, right? You know, and all the forms that you have to keep updating for various things and all your executive assistants that are doing all this shit. It's like, simplify your life, make tough decisions.
Yeah, still very impressive. Blair and I were like, we tried, David, we tried. Maybe you need a session of us private, the two of us just
Yeah.
tell us how to do that. How about you, Blair? Any more like practical kind of one-offs that we could give somebody for resilience in this moment?
Yeah, so from a sales front, smaller first steps, but also David and I think this has come up in at least one podcast episode and probably other places. Many years ago, David was driving through a snowstorm in Nebraska and he pulled over and called me. He said, I've got this idea. He said, where does confidence come from? He was so excited. And I had an answer, which I thought was right. I said, you take something you're good at and you borrow that strength in other domains in your life. He said, no, that's wrong. He said, it comes from two places. It comes from options and deeply held beliefs. And I said, I'll get back to you and tell you why that's wrong. And I thought about it for a year. And then about a year later, I said, that's brilliant. So where does confidence come from? Options and deeply held beliefs. Deeply held beliefs are innate, right? Faith. I believe things will be okay. It's the good work your parents did raising you, or the lottery of genes, or some other self-development work that you've done. But options, you want to increase your confidence on the sales front. You're confident when you have options. So what do options look like from a sales point of view? Money in the bank, a full pipeline, and I'll go back to another David Bakerism here, which is your opportunity exceeds your capacity. And maybe I'll get David to unpack that a little bit. But one of the things you were talking about, Tim, is that you hear often is, oh, I need to have some capacity for the magic pony or whatever. That's the dream client that could materialize at any moment. David, you want to talk more about that? About like that, how that most creative firms have that wrong
Yeah,
opportunity versus capacity.
I think it plagues us, especially in the US, where we feel like it's almost a sin to not take advantage of opportunity. We're the land of opportunity, for God's sake, right? So when we get this opportunity, we quickly staff up to serve it, and then we have to, then we're in debt to this capacity because we have to keep using it, right? Instead, so what Blair's saying is the opportunity needs to be higher than the capacity. If you just think of like a sales situation where you've got one module, one room full of stuff you can do for a client, and you've got two clients that want it, well, why would you discount your price? It's like, yeah. So sometimes sales solves that, but if that takes too long, then you need to reduce your capacity instead of building your opportunity. If you can't, you just have to maintain that gap, however you do it, one way or the other.
Yeah, the other addiction we have is growth. So when two
Right.
people show up, we double down and we build our business. And that goes against some of that idea you said before of simplifying. You don't have to make the biggest business. It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. And that big gigantic wood table in the middle of the conference room that you just eat at once a month or whatever. All that pressure we put on ourselves to make it look good and sound good and smell good, which actually has nothing to do with the reality of what you're doing for a living, and probably why you got into business to begin with.
Right.
Yeah. I love that thought of just who we really are and why we got into business to start. To know that anchor. I think that comes out when we say positioning. I know you guys talk about positioning and putting things out there, the messaging you give your sales team so that can be very clear, the creative execution of what's going on, and really truly, from my angle, even the investments you make should all follow who you are first, and the rest of it, let someone else live that life. Some people are built, and they should be built to run a 40, 50, $60 million a year agency. God bless them. And some people at 2 million, I think that's the best anchor point. 2 million is the sweet spot, and you should just live in that sweet spot and enjoy life differently, but enjoy life, whatever comes your way then.
Yeah, and I'll pose a question to build on that. How many of us who are running $2 million businesses have some sort of infrastructure built for a $10 million business? Because we looked at a larger business that we look up to, similar but larger, and thought, oh, they have this technology, they have these systems, they have this software. So you've gone and built it. Do you have expensive infrastructure that you put in place thinking you were going to be 5 times the size? And is there a way, and I know this because I've just gone through this myself in terms of like bringing some simplicity to an overly complex aspects of the business. And once you start to look at things through those eyes, is like, is this technology I invested in, what management systems, or whatever it is it really right for the size of business we are? Or did I get carried? Did I look at a model that was 10 times the size of this business and I put their infrastructure in place?
Right.
It's a good question to ask
like
yourself.
When you signed up for HubSpot when all you really needed was a Google sheet to manage the 16 people you're going to talk to this year.
Yeah, here's an example. So we're changing our CRM, we're changing our marketing automation tool and our CRM and importing over, and it's a massive project. And I have there are 99 automations and 281 tags in our CRM marketing automation. It's absolutely ridiculous.
No,
I had no idea.
No wonder you can't finish a book. You've been tagging the crap out of your CRM.
I haven't,
on your
but
book.
people are building automations, and some of it's just like code that was just like built a patch on patch on patch, and a lot of them aren't used anymore. But it's just a mess, like an unnecessary complexity. So once I cracked it open and looked at it and lost my shit, like now we're simplifying it. But like, are there other aspects of your business, not just complexity, but cost? Right? This is too complex. This is too costly. If the mantra for the foreseeable future is live to fight another day, survive, then what kind of complexity can you streamline? What kind of cost can you get rid of?
Yeah. What are you going to carry around in your backpack in the woods if you've got to carry it every day on a survival trip?
Although I hear you fill up an RV, David.
I do.
But,
yeah. But that's all necessary. That doesn't apply to me.
Yeah, right. That's the outdoorsy part. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I want to turn this to some Q&A, but before, some people might need to jump off. I actually want to drop a couple of just, basically things to share about what you guys are up to, where people can find you and so on. You've mentioned your podcast a few times today, but I don't know if everyone knows the Two Bobs podcast. It is very amazing. You guys drop this, it looks like every other week or so you're doing
every other Wednesday. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Or whenever you can get David in the room there. But yeah, you guys.
That's not an issue.
Every other topic of Two Bobs is really excellent, just for you all to know.
Yeah.
That.
And is that because every other one is when Blair does?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I love your podcast. It's in my feed next to the RevThinking podcast, which I have to listen to myself too, just so I get to my voice now. But I appreciate you guys putting that stuff out there and some of the thought leadership you have. Besides that, Blair, you're finishing a book. Are you finished a book? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I have a new website launching. It's supposed to launch Monday
Oh.
too, so don't put that up there.
It's
You know,
not yet,
the
huh?
feeling of what you've been working on your new site for a while, and
Yeah.
somebody shows you your current site. I
Who's
have a new
this guy?
book.
Look at this guy right here too on this
Yeah,
side. Isn't that
10
neat?
years
younger
younger.
version of me.
Yeah.
September 30th is the launch date. You'll be able to pre-order it maybe as soon as next week. It's called The 4 Conversations, a new model for selling expertise. It's basically the here's how to follow up to the Win Without Pitching manifesto. It is effectively our entire training program in a book, and you can buy it for $30.
Love it. I love it. When that drops, make sure you tell us. I'll make sure we post that in community too.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then David, your website is Punctuation. You are amazing at writing, and these articles you drop, as well as the newsletter comes out every week that I get in my inbox every Sunday.
Yep, that's free, no ads. So sign up for that. And then we've got our conference coming up October 21 to 23, which we couldn't get the speakers we wanted. So Tim is coming. No, Tim is one of the speakers for this year. So I hope you all can come. It's once a year. There'll be 100, 150 firms there. It's really fun. It's in a brewery too, with an open bar.
Blair, do you think we can get you back down there and recreate Palm Springs so we can?
He's going to be somewhere. You're not.
I'm
You're going to be in
speaking
Australia.
I'm going to speaking in Christchurch at that time.
You couldn't be any further away. We'll have to zoom
I
you
know.
in, I guess. Yeah.
I looked at it. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, next time, I guess. Or let's just the three of us go to Palm Springs.
I spoke there last year. I'll attend next year. David graciously invites all former speakers back to attend for free, which I think is a great idea. And Shannon Lee, our managing director, spoke the year before. So I'll be back there next October just to hang out with everybody. It's such a great event. It's so inspiring. The conversations you have with people between the speakers, they're worth it. And it's in a craft brewery with an open bar.
Gotta love that.
I don't have a problem.
And I'll just share one more thing for those of you who might be a guest of us today too. We have this thing called RevCommunity. It's this place where creative entrepreneurs are getting together and having open conversations. I think the dialogue is probably one of the strongest elements here. Just people mentioning things, talking about what their business is going on. I drop some articles in here, and Stash Media also gives us some points of inspiration of what's going on within their space. So if you're a creative entrepreneur and you're interested, feel free to join us at community.revthink.com and be part of that conversation. I want to open this thing up to some Q&A. You guys open for that? If you're interested,
sure.
You can raise your hand or whatever. I can bring you on. I think I'll drop the pin drops is what I'll do.
As long as they're good questions. No shit questions. As long as they're good.
I can't make any promises, I guess.
Who wants to take that challenge on?
I'm going to go live on camera. Turn on your camera and feel free to just jump in, unmute yourself or raise your hand if you want to. This thing out of control. Go ahead, Andrew.
Just curious if there's anything in either of your two books that you would change today. Like if you were maybe writing it today, I guess.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of positivity from you guys, but I'm wondering if the other 50 or 60 people are feeling the same positivity, because
I see Andrew trying to figure out which chapters he could skip so he can catch up.
No, not at all. I mean, look at like Blair, I'm a big student of both of you guys, and but I'm just curious if it's all still gospel today, or if any of it has. Do you want to do 2.0? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah,
go ahead, Blair. Go ahead.
Okay, so the book you held up, Pricing Creativity, came out in January of 2018. Or is it 2016? It's 2018.
Yeah, 18.
2 years later, I basically traveled the world and spoke on that book for 2 years. 2 years later, I realized what I knew about pricing that was not in that book could fill another book. And it will be the second edition. So nobody on here will buy that. This is the first time I've said it publicly, that my next book after this one, I've already started working on it, is the second edition of Pricing Creativity. There is so much that is not in that book. And some of what is in that book is now in the new book that you can get for $30. And I'll just say one big thing, when I wrote that book, I was still under the assumption that there was really largely one business model for creative firms. So the next version of it just has a whole lot more nuance around there are different ways to do this, different models, different levels of productization, which have different implications for pricing, more on subscription. Yeah, there's a lot more I know about pricing. I probably learned in the 2 years, first 2 years after that book, I learned more about pricing, or as much as I learned in the 6 or 7 years that I was kind of doing the research and writing that book.
It is kind of the curse of the advisor that you
Yeah.
have to learn to give more and more grace. You stand out and initially because you're saying one strong thing, but you learn really a lot of nuance and give more grace to business owners and recognize, well, it's what I'm saying is totally true, except for we should work out something different with you kind of aspect with them. David,
One more thing, and I'll pass it to David. I would just say the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, which came out in 2010, there's nothing about that book I would change.
I wouldn't either. I love it.
Fascinating.
Thank you.
Emily just handed me these two. Like I got these ones, David, here.
Yeah.
Your props are up next, David.
So
Yeah.
Secret Tradecraft, I wouldn't change anything in there, although it's a little arrogant, probably. I might change the tone a little bit. Managing Right for the first time. Nobody's read that book, but it's a really, really good book. But the last half could just be chopped off and you wouldn't lose anything. Financial Management was revised version 2.0, and so that's really up to date.
Doug's holding up Managing Right. That's an underappreciated book. It's a very good book on managing.
There we go. Oh, yeah, cool. And then the Business of Expertise, the first 30 pages on positioning are really good, but there's a lot more to be said about that. I'm toying with actually writing a book on just positioning. And then I'm writing a new book will be out in a couple months on M&A, and it's perfect. Just trust me on that. It's just perfect.
It's 50,000 words so far. So you have everything in there. Perfect. How can you go wrong?
I'll know what isn't good. I'll know what isn't good in a few years.
Tim, can I just close just real quick? Just guys like Blair and David, like your work is really meaningful to us, and I just want to say thank you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
And Seth, Emily was holding up the Business of Expertise.
Yeah.
Cool.
Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm assuming the difference in tone between coming in with a low price offer to get yourself in the door, that there is a difference in tone between, hey, here is a discount, please pick me, I'm desperate, and hey, we're so confident in our work that we know that there's a little bit of risk on your part trying to vet us and establish this new relationship. We're so confident we're willing to come in with a really sweet deal. So I would love for you to talk about the differentiation between those two things and how you don't set a tone for low price that makes it hard for you to step up into the higher price that you want to charge past that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you think of that post that I dropped the link to in the chat that dropped today, and specifically about one of the commodifying factors is cutting price the wrong way. And I talk about the right way and the wrong way there. And you can expand that behavior out to include other related behaviors where the salesperson is experiencing some pressure, resistance from the buyer, economic pressure, etc. So they keep volunteering things. And it's not just a price cut. And what you really need to do, and I walk, it's pretty simple, but I walk through in the post how to do this if you're going to cut price. It applies to other domains as well, or the things that other concessions that you would make is let go of this idea that you might have that I just need to give them X or push Y. And stop and ask a question. Ask the client, hey, it sounds like you're struggling with making a decision on this. I understand it's tough economic times and you don't want to screw this up. Is there something I can do for you to make the decision easier or more palatable? Or ask, so you don't have to show up with all the solutions. Because if you're guessing at what it's going to take to get this deal done, I'll bet you guess wrong. So
Nice.
ask. And the wrong type of client might take advantage of that, but you're just asking a question. You can always say no. Just be a little bit more collaborative. Don't feel like you need to be the brilliant salesperson with the answer to the problem. Be the person with the question. Be empathetic, understanding of the client's situation, and say, hey, I get a sense you're struggling with the decision. Talk to me about it. What can I do to help you? And, you know, the answer might be a price cut. It might be terms. You know, terms is something we don't think creatively enough about. I wrote a post on that too. I'll try to find it and post a link to it. If you have the ability to, you can get creative with terms. If affordability is the issue, as opposed to price, consider extending some terms, especially if it's a good client.
I thank you for giving people permission. I often feel like the need to perform, or the feeling of the need to perform, that we're supposed to have all the information ready to go before we walk in the room, every question answered, instead of recognizing that true intelligence is recognizing when the question needs to be asked and willing to listen to what that client has to say. Even if you don't understand it, to say, slow down, let me understand more. Let's get into even deeper questions, instead of being able to keep the facade up. And I think that lack of engagement is where we lose our clients, especially if they're in crisis with us, if they're under different challenges that we're supposed to come alongside them to help with. We need to be open to hearing them and then asking more questions so we can understand those issues and solve them with them. So that's excellent advice. Thank you, Blair. Jeff, do you have a question?
Jeff's frozen on my screen, but I just want to point out his goatee looks great. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, it looks great. He's going to be so bummed that we called on him, and he froze right when we called on him.
A lot of old friends here. Hi, everybody.
Anyone else want to jump into the question?
There's Vern. Hey,
Yeah.
Vern.
Go ahead, Vern.
He's just saying hi.
Oh. That's it. Everyone's quiet. They're waiting for someone else to ask the question, I guess. Oh, go ahead, Vern. Yeah, you just have to unmute.
Well, I appreciate you gathering all these smart people together. I always find it helpful to have a bit of a context. And from what I heard from both Blair and David is like, hey, it's not the best of times, not the worst of times, just hang in there, you know. I'm wondering if you could liken it to any other cycles that we have all been through in the last 5, 10, 15 years. It's not after 9/11, it's not the global financial crisis. I mean, what perspective do you have? I mean, because I'm trying to drive growth, and I mean, everything's taken longer and longer to close. I mean, I think this, you know, fear of messing up is a great new term. I'm going to let that rattle around my head for a while.
It feels like 2009 to me. That's what it feels like.
Oh, that's funny. I thought it didn't. That's funny. So go ahead, because
I don't remember any average years. I just remember the really good ones and really bad ones.
Well, tell me why you think it sounds like 2009, because
it just, so still lots of leads, still lots of conversations. Few of them go forward. They go forward at slower speed. I remember in 2009 being grateful of having a recurring revenue stream. Yeah, it feels like in 2009, I did a seminar, not one of my first ones, but and I invited David to it.
Is
and it
this
was
the
in
Bermuda one? Oh,
it was in Bermuda.
There was a lot of food.
And we were pretty good at filling up these things. And I thought, well, let's move one offshore. Everybody, who doesn't want to go to Bermuda? So fancy hotel in Bermuda, and it's like 4 people there.
Mm.
And then David and his wife and my wife and I, and I remember the conversations with people saying, oh, I really want to go to this thing. but I cannot see. So two people said a version of this to me, and I'll extrapolate it out. I cannot have my staff see me spending this money in this environment. And it hadn't occurred to me before. I'd only been in business about 7 years, but it hadn't occurred to me, oh yeah, there are things that it's not just the reality of whether there's a return on investment, but the fact that this thing is in Bermuda is going to send all the wrong signals. So there are things that your clients will buy from you that are seen as necessary, and some things are seen as a luxury. And I think a lot of businesses right now, it's not a good thing to be seen spending on a luxury.
I think I heard once where, like, if in good times, Tide, when they want to sell something on commercial, they put like a person on a horseback and all these extreme situations, and it's all fancy and romantic. But in down times, they get very practical, and they show a person pouring Tide into the washing machine and washing clothes. Like, you just like get rid of all the fringe and just go like, we just wash clothes. We basically take care of what you need to. So they're in the economic downturn. What makes me feel different than the 2008, 2009 is that I often felt like many of the shifts that we felt before are like locks and channels of water. So like it will shift and move away from one, but then it moved to tech. So if you were in tech, it was good, but if you're in entertainment, it was bad. Or if you were in commercial, it was good, or entertainment's good, but commercial is bad. And the water shifted around, and you might have had bad luck where you were sitting, but there was still water in the channels. This feels like all the water's gone out. And what's really strange is how universal it is. It's not just in the US, it's global. It is totally global. We have 60 countries represented in
it's more pronounced in Europe.
Yeah. And it's in all areas, in tech, entertainment, in commercial, in live. And like it is in so many areas. There isn't, the only people I hear are winning are what you pointed out earlier, David, which is the people that have retained a client who almost lost their department. So there was a department of 7. Now we're a department of 3. We're going to give most of the work to you because I don't have enough time to make decisions. I'm going to make one big decision. You could have my $8 million. I usually give you 4. So that's the one thing I can see gaining. But I just like, this total like thing or empty channel thing that's happened over the last year and a half. That's the one thing that I've been trying to figure out of like, where did it go and where does it reset? But I would say for us now, we're different than the news cycle is we felt this 18 months ago. And I think a lot of us have realized we're not in a panic anymore. I was panicking 18 months ago. Now this normal, I know what to do with, and I can make those decisions and react possibly. So I'm a little bit optimistic.
I think we ought to make decisions as if this is the new normal and not something bigger is happening, right? I for some reason, I don't know why I was inspired to do this. Last night, I wrote down all the countries I had clients in, and it was 47 countries, and there's 14 countries I'm working in right now. And actually the US is kind of my smallest market right now. It's just odd. And it's everywhere. The world is so interconnected. And that's what's nerve-wracking about it. You're not just nervous about what happens in our country in the US that's protected by an ocean on each side. Now what happens in some village somewhere can have an impact on us. And so even if things get really, really better, I don't think we should scale our businesses for that. I think we should scale our businesses for exactly what it is right now.
Yeah, very 100% agree. That's a perfect way of thinking of it. It's 3:00. It's been an hour, but we have a lot of bodies here. If you guys are good, I'll take one more question. Otherwise, we can wrap this up. And even Ashley is raising her hand. Ashley's coming to Atlanta, by the way, because she's in Atlanta. So she's signing me up for the Mind Your Own Business seminar right now. And Ashley,
I already talked about it so yes, we're doing that. Right. I just, as we talk, and it's funny, I wonder how many people on this call were in business in 2008 when that happened before we were. But the big difference to me is that just the volume, like the volume of us, there are so many more people doing what we do now, competing with each other for this amount of work, so many more outlets. I mean, at that time, we weren't really doing much social yet because the iPhone just came out in like 2007 or something. So it was a very different time because you had connections with networks and agencies doing that work to tape and all those things, so much has changed. There weren't motion design schools or, programs at SCAD or any of that. It just feels like the volume of everything has gone up, and therefore it does feel more scarce, the amount of work that's available for each one of us. It's not that it's less work. I just feel like there's more people spread across more and more people.
And you don't have to be a big firm to snag that work. It's okay. It's been acceptable now to send that work off to a 2 or 3 person firm that was started by accident when somebody got laid off, right? And then you have the bigger firms reaching down to get it. And something that I don't hear many people talk about, but I think it's a part of it is, the promise of a digital age was that we could allocate our marketing dollars and we could have more clear attribution about what was going to happen. That is absolutely the opposite of what's happened. Right now, there's so little attribution. Like in the past, you'd talk about unaccountable spend. That was like a brand video that was just meant to make people feel good. Now, it isn't all unaccountable spend, but you have the decision makers on the client side saying, I honestly don't know what works anymore. The world is so complex, and I have all these options. And that's one of the reasons why they're not making big changes, is because it's like Tim said earlier, it's like, I don't want to get fired, so I'm just going to do what we did before. So here you are on the outside, not having worked for that client before, wondering why they're not willing to take a chance on you. And the world is more complex. It's less accountable. There's less attribution. There's people from all over the place working. And this is especially true for your field. It's not true for big advertising stuff, but in your field, you don't have to be a huge firm to do good work. And so I think all of that stuff makes it tougher. I'm still very optimistic about the field. I mean, the way I would kind of think about it is, and Blair keeps telling me I need better illustrations, but the weak kids are going to get thrown off the merry-go-round here. Just hang on. It's going to slow down at some point, and be there when that happens, right? So some of these firms are going to go under a lot. That's good. If you're not one of them, it's good.
Yeah. So in 2003, when I spoke at your first MYOB conference, David, I said from the stage, because I was a young, brash person, I said, I love a recession. It's like a disease going through an animal herd. It kills the sick and the weak, and it makes the herd stronger.
So my illustration isn't too bad then, I guess.
But the reality is, so this is going to put some businesses out of work. And let's say that business has a dozen employees. 2 or 3 new firms are going to spring up when those employees start their own thing. And to your point, Ashley, you find yourself competing against smaller and smaller firms. So the cleansing of the ecosystem of the herd that was kind of the cleansing function of a recession, I'm not sure that it's as valuable anymore, because it just seems to pop up all these other smaller businesses.
There was a book years ago called The Starfish and the Spider, and the metaphor was a spider has a body with many legs, but this sounds weird, but if you take the leg off a spider, the spider is hurt and the leg dies. If you were to take a leg off a starfish, the starfish grows another leg and the leg becomes another starfish. And to some degree, we're in a very starfish world right now, where like the people are leaving are just becoming part of the pool and part of the momentum. But there is opportunity, and this is why I want people to be very critical about cash and cash position, is that as people are becoming free, talent's becoming free, those that are in a cash position can basically trade up. And that sounds kind of weird, but think of it like a talent basis, or if you're in a team, this is the moment you might be a star quarterback because the other team can't afford it, or their team is dealing with an issue. So this is the moment that talent shifts, and you can think differently about the talent you have and the type of work you want to do in the future. You can acquire that talent now. They're available. But you do have to be in a cash position or in a client friendly position that the work will keep on coming, so you don't lose team members that you wanted to retain also.
And your talent needs to be good enough, but it's the quality of your business decisions that's going to determine whether you're around later.
Yeah, it's ability to make that specific decision.
Yeah.
To know who to keep and who to grow and how to build is key part.
How much risk to take? Yeah.
Mark, you want to jump in the question?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Hey guys, Blair and David, thanks so much. This is a real treat to be able to chat here in real life. I've been a long time listener and as Andrew said, a student of both of you for years. So thanks so much. My question, I'm calling from Australia. I have an events agency in Melbourne. We operate all around Australia. And can attest to this being a global issue. It's definitely tight here. Normally, we are probably 6 to 10 to 12 months behind the trends in business here, as far as like the impacts of global sort of headwinds. But we're finding that distance is shortening as things kind of get a little bit kind of tighter everywhere. But my question was more in and around, have you seen much change in clients having their in-house teams tighten up, and then there'd be opportunities to step in as an external supplier for those services? Has that been a sort of a trend over there at all?
I think you'd have more exposure to that, David, than I would.
I have not seen that actually. And if you look at the likelihood of a big corporation retaining a particular service, video, film, audio tends to be something they hang on to and job that out less, except for the big fun projects. So no, I haven't. I think the pressure is coming in spending less dollars on the outside and still keeping the corporate people busy. I don't have data on that. There are other firms that do. That's just my sense of it at the moment.
The big corporations are impacted in a way that they need more efficiency in their own pipeline. So I find that the go-to or familiar people that they work with is really just trying to find efficiency. But I think they're the ones dealing with the most FOMO. They're the ones that feel like they're going to stick with status quo because they just want to keep their job. 3 of their friends just lost their job at the same company. So there's like a weird industry behavior taking place there that's affecting us. And it has nothing to do with us or our ability or the video we just posted on our website. None of that's going to impact that part of the decision-making pipeline.
I wish I had better data on that, Mark. Sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
That's okay. We've noticed a couple of bigger organizations here have tightened up their teams and lost marketing teams or reduced their marketing team sizes here. So I'm just wondering, there's only been 2 that I'm aware of. I'm just wondering, was it a trend elsewhere or if anybody else has seen that happen? Yeah.
The weird thing is that the marketing teams dropped off, but it didn't. Sometimes it flows to us, right? You guys have already seen that where the marketing team drops off, so they outsource it all. In this case, the marketing team dropped off and the work still didn't show up, or the pressure is still there, to use your previous metaphor, Blair. The pressure is still there. So when it gets released in a lot. Like one company just gets flooded with $2 million worth of work instead of it being dispensed slowly throughout the year to multiple agencies. So it's a very interesting process that people are going through.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Doug, why don't you ask? You'll be our last question because we went way over time. I didn't ask these guys to be here all day. But
I have a very quick question for David.
Sure.
I really enjoyed and was inspired by the business of expertise. But one of the things that I struggled with when I work with leaders is it's hard to see the expertise. How do you measure that? On an ROI basis, like, oh, I have this employee cost me X. How do I know what I get out of it? How do you measure something that you can't see, which is knowledge work, as opposed to something you can see, which might be an assembly line or something tangible?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends a lot on whether this person is client facing or not. If they're client facing, the clients are going to make the decision for you, right? That will be pretty easy. You'll just listen to those signals. Internally, I mean, I think this is something that is required of a leader is to make decisions about expertise when they don't. It's almost like somebody reffing a game that they've never played. It's hard. They have the skill of recognizing ability even when they don't have that particular ability. So I think it's just something that good leaders have, and also you're depending on the feedback you're getting from other people too. You're not just looking for deep expertise, you're looking for a cultural fit too. Both of those things have to be there. And like your environment ought to be such that people have time to put their feet up and think. They shouldn't always be busy. They should have the opportunity to deepen their expertise. They need the opportunity to fail every once in a while. They need you to sponsor them as learners and so on. But in terms of actually evaluating them, I don't really have a great answer for that.
I like the idea that leadership comes from having vision. So to give them time and space to think about something, premeditate something, invent something is a big part of creating opportunity for leadership and creating value for clients. Before clients ask you for that deliverable, you have to almost invent it, or at least know how to handle it. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for jumping in here, being part of this conversation. It was really fun to collaborate with you, and to get you both on video live and in person is such a treat for us. So thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
And good luck with the upcoming book and upcoming events. And if anyone's interested in seeing a replay of this, we will post this on YouTube so you can see that. And I think we're going to take the first part of this conversation and turn it into a podcast. So those of you who are on the RevThinking podcast, you can be part of that. Maybe you can convince the two Bobs to repurpose it on their podcast too, if you're a follower of theirs instead of ours. I don't know.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Great to
All right,
see
talk to you
all
guys
the
soon.
familiar faces. Bye-bye.
Thank you.